Okay. Hello and welcome to the latest in the series of Planning and Environment podcast at Shoesmiths. My name is Emma Cartledge Taylor and I am a solicitor predominantly based out of the Birmingham office. With me today is Anna Cartledge, a partner also in our Birmingham office, and Will Thomas, an associate based out of our Nottingham office. The topic of this podcast stems from the Planning for the Futures paper and the permitted development rights that were mentioned and proposed to be brought forward. Before we go into that, bit of background is probably useful, and looking at what are permitted development rights and where they come from. Will, I think you've been looking into this more.
Yes, certainly. Thanks, Emma. So, permitted development rights, well, they are what they say on the tin, really. There are certain types of development, whether operational or change of use, which are granted permission by national legislation without the need to submit a separate planning application. So the Town and Country Planning Act allows for an order to be made by the Secretary of State for these types of development, and there have been a number of orders over the years. The latest one is the General Permitted Development Order 2015, and that sets out a number of different classes of developments which are often subject to particular limitations and conditions, but these classes of development have been tweaked quite a lot over the years by different governments, and as the topic of this podcast suggests, there's going to be further tweaks to come.
Thanks, Will. Now, obviously you mentioned that this has been tweaked and moved forward by the various governments. Anna, what's the general direction of travel been for permitted development rights?
Yeah, so the general direction of travel for them is that they are being used more and more. They're quite an effective tool for the government to facilitate unlocking types of development. And clearly, the highest thing on the government's agenda at the moment is, other than COVID-19, is the delivery of housing and the delivery of meaningful numbers. The Planning for the Future paper, in particular, trailed the need for meaningful delivery of affordable homes. So permitted development rights can be an easy way and a quick way for the delivery of certain types of development. So the most recent one that we've seen used widely is the Office to Residential, which began life as a temporary right and then morphed to a permanent right. So it's not been without its controversies because some of the units fall short of space standards and other things. So that's the direction of travel, and it certainly looks like we're getting more permitted development rights being introduced for the delivery of residential units.
Thanks, Anna. In terms of the new rules, we said that they're being tweaked again. The first one is a new rules to encourage building upwards. And Anna, I'm not sure what your thoughts on this one are.
Yes, this is a proposed permitted development right to allow both individual homeowners and also those that own blocks of flats to put up to an additional 2 stories on top of existing dwellings. So this was being trailed by the Department of Communities and Local Government, and it's likely that it will be within the Housing White Paper. We're expecting that in the spring, but now it's been delayed and we're not entirely sure when it's coming out. As ever with these things, the devil will be in the detail, and we don't know exactly how these permitted development rights are going to apply or will be required in terms of prior approval for them. So we'll have to wait and see.
Thanks, Anna. The need to deliver more housing follows through into the second permitted development right, which is proposed in the Planning for the Future paper, which is to allow vacant commercial and industrial buildings and vacant residential blocks to be replaced with new residential blocks. And Will, what are your thoughts on this proposal?
Well, just to mirror Anna's comments, really, that the devil will be in the detail. There's not much information at the moment, but this type of proposed PD right does raise quite a number of questions. First of all, is what will the sort of limitations and conditions be around this particular sort of right? It could be a very expansive PD right at the moment. It's normally the sort of thing you would expect a full planning permission for. What will the prior approval process be? Demolishing a vacant industrial or commercial building and replacing it with new homes could throw up all sorts of issues, which, in the interest of proper planning, you'd hope would be dealt with properly and not just simply allowed through under PD rights. Things such as contamination, highways, education, impacts, and one would hope that they would be addressed through the prior approval process. And also, considerations for particular commercial industrial zones in certain cities. How does that sit along local plan allocated sites? At the moment, it would fall outside of those. But I know when they introduced office to resi, there was a period where certain exclusion zones applied in London for particularly important industrial and economic sites, which allowed planning authorities time to make Article 4 directions. So you'd hope that similar zones might be included with this, and that local authorities also would have time to consider prior approval applications, and that the deemed approval route wouldn't allow, again, developers to push through applications which may not be of the highest standard. I think the other thing is the comments in the planning for the future document relating to high standards of design and building beautiful and building spacious homes, and how that sits alongside this type of PD rights. Some of the criticism that's been levelled against the office to resi development right over the years is that it's allowed for developments to be pushed through which allow for very small dwellings which don't accord with the housing design standards in development plans. And again, I think we see a risk here that a similar occurrence could happen with this PD right. So while well-intentioned, I think, I hope the government does consider these aspects carefully, and a balance is struck between allowing for more housing development to come through without a slip in standards.
Thanks, Will. To draw on some of the points that you've raised, one of the things that keeps coming back to me is under a normal planning application, you would normally under the 106 agreement, you would see provision for affordable housing and other things. Anna, what are your thoughts on these permitted development rights and what impact this might have on the provision of affordable housing?
I think that's the elephant in the room at the moment. It's not been addressed. There's no detail at all, and I agree with Will. It doesn't chime with the rest of the paper, which highlights the need for meaningful delivery of affordable housing and quickly, and in a variety of tenures, and looks at securing the future for those who are most vulnerable in society. So there's going to have to be some sort of mechanism whereby affordable housing can be unlocked meaningfully, and whether that's by way of, even though it's not a planning application, if you rely on permitted development rights, there's nothing to stop you putting in a Section 106 obligation whereby you covenant that X percentage will be affordable. So quite how this will work going forward, we don't know. So we're just going to wait the detail with interest, I think.
Thanks, Anna. I think one of the main themes about these permitted development rights is the wait and see. I think the original suggestion was that these would be introduced by the summer of 2020. However, given the current climate, it's a wait and see to see sort of how far these fall up the priority to-do list of the government. If any of you do have any questions or queries and want to discuss this further, please do get in touch. And I'd just like to say thank you to Anna and Will for joining today's podcast.
Great. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you.